You have felt it, haven't you? That unshakable sense that something is coming. Something vast, inevitable, and terrifyingly real. The world around you is changing at a pace no generation before has ever witnessed. Governments grow bolder in their reach, watching your every move, dictating what you can say, buy, believe. Technology infiltrates every aspect of life, promising convenience but demanding submission. The old foundations, faith, morality, truth, are crumbling under the weight of a new order, one that whispers that God is irrelevant and that man is the ultimate architect of his own destiny. But deep down, you know the truth. This is not progress. This is prophecy, and it is unfolding now. Do you really think all of this is coincidence? That wars erupt across the globe without purpose? That economies teeter on the brink without reason? That natural disasters strike with increasing fury by mere chance? The pieces are falling into place exactly as foretold. The book of Revelation was never just a poetic warning. It was a blueprint, a roadmap for those willing to see. The signs are not hidden. They are blaring like a siren in the dead of night. And yet, the world sleeps. The masses are hypnotized by distractions, blind to the chains being fastened around them. But you, right now, are being called to wake up. Because the time to choose is running out. They have conditioned you to dismiss the warnings. Conspiracy theories, they scoff. Religious fanaticism, they mock. But tell me, when did the truth become so dangerous? When did questioning the system become an act of rebellion? The world tells you to trust its leaders, its experts, its ever-changing version of reality. But those who hold the power do not seek your well-being. They seek your obedience. The agenda is clear. Silence the voices that question, erase the past that warns, and mold a future where faith is nothing more than an obsolete relic. And still, most refuse to see it. They laugh at the storm, clouds gathering on the horizon, just as they laughed at Noah before the flood. But laughter does not stop prophecy. And what of the mark, the prophecy that so many once dismissed as impossible? Look around you. The shift has already begun. Physical currency fades. Digital identification tightens its grip. And a system emerges that will control who can buy, who can sell, who can exist freely. It will not come with a flashing neon sign that says, "This is it." No, it will be gradual, seamless, logical. A solution to global crises, a means of security, a small compromise in the name of progress. And the world will embrace it. Because those who do not will be seen as outcasts, as threats, as enemies of the new order. The chains will not feel like chains at first, but make no mistake, they will bind just the same. Do you understand what this means? Do you grasp the weight of what is happening? This is not just about politics, economics, or technology. This is spiritual. The battle is not fought with weapons you can see, but with forces that have been at war since the beginning of time. You are warned of this deception. The Antichrist will not appear as a tyrant in chains, but as a savior offering solutions. He will promise unity in a fractured world, peace in the midst of chaos, answers where none seem to exist. And they will follow him. They will worship him, not because they are forced to, but because they will want to. He will be everything the world desires. And in their blindness, they will not see the snare tightening around them. But you who are hearing this now, you are being given a choice. You were not meant to be a passive observer as history unfolds. You were not placed here to watch idly as prophecy becomes reality. The time for silence has passed. The time for hesitation is over. You must decide now whether you will stand firm or be swept away in the tide of deception. Because neutrality does not exist in this war. You cannot serve two masters. The world will demand your loyalty. It will require your submission. It will make you believe that resistance is futile. But know this, standing with God has always come at a cost, and soon that cost will be higher than ever before. They will call it progress. They will frame it as the next step in human evolution. A world without borders, without divisions, without the outdated constraints of religion and morality. A world where science reigns supreme, where technology replaces faith, where man no longer bows to anything greater than himself. But understand this, what they call liberation is enslavement. What they call enlightenment is deception. The serpent's lie in Eden was the same. you will be like gods. And humanity, in its arrogance, still clings to that illusion. But the truth is unchanging. The throne of God is not vacant. The judgment of God is not idle. And those who defy him will not escape what is coming. And what is coming is already here. You can feel it. The world groans under the weight of its own corruption. The birth pains are intensifying. Wars, disasters, moral decay, lawlessness spreading like wildfire. These are not random events. These are warnings. But warnings are only useful to those who listen. How many will ignore them until it is too late? How many will scoff, mock, and continue chasing after the fleeting comforts of this world, believing they have all the time in the world? But time is running out. The clock does not stop for the indifferent. The storm is not waiting for your convenience. It is moving forward, and you must decide, will you wake up, or will you be swept away? The days of comfortable faith are over. The illusion that you can blend into this world while still holding on to truth is crumbling. A line is being drawn, and every soul will have to choose a side. Will you stand firm in faith, knowing that persecution is inevitable? Or will you bow to the system, convincing yourself that compromise is survival? Because make no mistake, this system will not tolerate those who refuse to conform. The moment will come when you are asked to choose between allegiance to God and allegiance to the world. And it will not be an easy choice. It will cost you friendships, security, even your very life. But what is a life surrendered to deception worth? History has shown this pattern before. In every generation, there have been those who stood against the tide, who refused to deny their faith, even as the world turned against them. They were called fanatics. They were mocked, imprisoned, executed. But they knew something this world refuses to understand. Eternity is not a gamble. The suffering of this life is temporary, but the consequences of turning away from truth are eternal. And now, in this generation, the cost of standing firm will only grow higher. The question is, when the pressure comes, when your faith is tested beyond what you thought possible, will you remain standing, or will you fall? They will try to break you. They will come with laws, mandates, and decrees that strip away your freedoms piece by piece, all in the name of order, security, and peace. They will tell you that compliance is the only path forward, that resistance is dangerous, that those who refuse to follow are enemies of the greater good. And many will believe them. Many will surrender without a fight, convinced that standing against the system is foolish, that clinging to faith is outdated. But those who understand the truth will see it for what it is, a slow, deliberate march toward total control. The world is not preparing for peace. It is preparing for submission. And when that final moment arrives, when the world stands on the precipice of its last great deception, there will be no more time to prepare. The doors will close, just as they did in the days of Noah. The warnings will cease, just as they did before the fire rained down on Sodom. And those who scoffed, those who ignored the signs, will finally understand, but it will be too late. They will cry out, desperate to turn back, desperate to undo their choices. But the moment of decision is now, not tomorrow, not when the pressure increases. Now, because prophecy is not waiting for you to believe in it. It is moving forward, whether you are ready or not. You might think you still have time, that the world will return to normal, that this is just another cycle of history repeating itself. But open your eyes. Nothing is as it was before. The very fabric of society is shifting, the pace accelerating, the pressure mounting. What once took centuries to change now transforms in mere years, months, even days. Governments no longer hide their intentions. The push for absolute control is no longer a theory. It is a reality unfolding before you. The system is tightening its grip, conditioning the masses to obey, to accept, to comply. And those who refuse, they will be seen as obstacles, as dangers to the carefully crafted illusion of peace and progress. But true peace cannot be manufactured by men. It does not come through laws, treaties, or technological advancements. It cannot be found in the promises of rulers, nor in the conveniences of a digital world. The peace this world offers is a deception, temporary, fragile, designed to lure you into complacency. Real peace comes from only one source, and those who seek it outside of him will be left empty, desperate, and deceived. The day is coming when people will cry out for salvation from the very system they embraced. But the time for easy escapes will have passed. You will either be rooted in the truth, standing unshaken as the storm rages, or you will be swept away with the rest. The deception will not come with force at first. It will come wrapped in promises of security, of stability, of a better future. It will appeal to logic, to reason, to the fears of a world in crisis. The solution will seem obvious, the alternatives too costly. Step by step, the world will be led down a path from which there is no turning back. And then, when the moment is right, the veil will be lifted. The choice will no longer be disguised as convenience. It will be a demand. Pledge your loyalty or be cast out. Take the mark or be denied access to the system. What once seemed unthinkable will become reality, and the world, having been conditioned to comply, will kneel willingly. But you have been warned. You cannot claim ignorance. You cannot say you did not see this coming. The signs were given, the prophecies laid bare for all to see. The problem was never the lack of truth, it was the unwillingness to accept it. The world does not want truth. It wants comfort. It wants the illusion that all is well, that humanity is in control, that faith is unnecessary. But reality is not swayed by desire. The events set in motion will not stop because the world refuses to acknowledge them. The final hour approaches, and the only question that remains is, will you stand with truth, or will you fall with the lie? And do not be deceived. This is not just about survival. This is about your soul. The mark is not merely an economic system or a political structure. It is a declaration of allegiance, a final test of loyalty. To accept it is to reject God. To reject it is to embrace suffering, but only for a time, because what comes after this world is eternal. Those who bow to the system will find temporary comfort, but at the cost of something far greater. And those who refuse, they will be cast out, persecuted, even put to death. But in the end, their reward will be far beyond what this world could ever offer. The question is, do you truly understand what is at stake? Many will believe they can stay neutral, that they can wait until the very last moment to decide. But neutrality is an illusion. Every choice, every compromise, every small surrender is leading you somewhere. You are either drawing closer to truth or further into deception. There is no middle ground. The forces at work in this world are not passive. They are not waiting for you to make up your mind. They are moving, advancing, tightening their grip. And if you do not make a stand now, if you do not anchor yourself in truth today, you will not have the strength to resist when the final test comes. Because when that moment arrives, hesitation will cost you everything. Look around you. The warnings are no longer subtle. The world is shifting, bending under the weight of its own. Corruption, violence escalates, nations crumble, morality is redefined, and truth is silenced. What was once unthinkable is now celebrated. What was once sacred is now mocked. And yet, so many remain asleep, blind to the gathering storm. They place their trust in leaders who deceive them, in systems designed to control them, in promises that will never be kept. But the time is coming when the illusion will shatter, when the comfort they cling to will be ripped away. And in that moment, they will realize, too late, that they were warned. But you are hearing this now. You are being given the chance to see, to prepare, to choose. Because soon, the choice will no longer be yours to make. The world is moving toward its final chapter, and every event unfolding before you is another page turning. The rise of a single global authority, the collapse of sovereignty, the merging of economies, the increasing dependency on technology. These are not random occurrences. They are calculated. They are deliberate. They are leading to one inevitable conclusion. And when that moment arrives, when the world willingly submits to the greatest deception in history, will you have the strength to resist? Or will you, like so many others, surrender without even realizing what you have done? Do you think this is fear-mongering? That these are just exaggerated warnings meant to stir paranoia? Then ask yourself, why does the world work so hard to silence voices like this? Why are those who speak the truth labeled as threats, as extremists, as dangers to society? The system does not fear lies. It thrives on them. But the truth is dangerous because it exposes the deception. And so, They will do everything in their power to make sure you never wake up. They will flood your mind with distractions, bury you in entertainment, feed you narratives designed to keep you docile, compliant, asleep, because the last thing they want is for you to open your eyes. But you are hearing this now. That means you still have a chance to see what others refuse to acknowledge, a chance to break free from the illusion and prepare for what is coming. Because make no mistake, it is coming. The days of warning are drawing to a close, and soon reality will crash down with a force no one can ignore. Those who mocked, those who doubted, those who called this paranoia will be forced to confront the truth. And when they do, they will wish they had listened. The question is, will you, or will you, be among those who realize the truth only when it is too late? There will be no excuses on that day, no pleading ignorance, no claiming you didn't know. The warnings have been clear, the signs undeniable. The choice is not hidden, it is right in front of you. But the decision is yours to make. No one will force you to see the truth. No one will drag you into the light. You must choose to open your eyes, to step out of the deception, to stand firm when the world demands that you bow. Because when the final test comes, there will be no more time to prepare. You will either be ready or you will fall, and that fall will not be temporary. It will be eternal. And do not think you can rely on strength you do not yet have. Faith is not built in a moment. It is forged in the fire of daily choices. Every time you choose truth over comfort, you grow stronger. Every time you stand firm when it would be easier to conform, your foundation is strengthened. But those who wait, those who think they will choose wisely when the time comes, will find themselves weak, unprepared, unable to resist. You do not train for battle on the day of the war. You prepare now. You take your stand now. Because when the storm arrives, when the world demands your loyalty, you will either stand unshaken or be swept away. The floodgates are opening. The deception is accelerating. What was once done in secret is now unfolding in plain sight. The world is being prepared for something unprecedented, something final. The stage is being set, and every event, every crisis, every shift in power is another step toward the inevitable. But do you see it? Do you understand what is happening? Or are you still hoping that things will return to the way they were, that normalcy will return? Let me tell you the truth. Normal is gone. The world you once knew is never coming back. The days ahead will be unlike anything seen before, and those who refuse to acknowledge this reality will be the first to fall. But you have been given an opportunity. Right here, right now, you are being told what most will never realize until it is too late. This is not about fear. This is about preparation, about seeing clearly before the storm reaches full force. Because once it does, once the system is fully in place, escape will not be an option. The moment to act is not when the walls have closed in around you. It is before the choice is forced upon you, before the lines are drawn in blood, before the final moment arrives when you will have to decide. Do you stand with truth no matter the cost? Or do you surrender to the lie, hoping for temporary safety at the price of your soul? The cost of truth has always been high. The prophets were hated. The disciples were hunted. The faithful were imprisoned, tortured, and killed. Why? Because they refused to bow. Because they saw through the deception and chose to stand firm, even when the entire world turned against them. And now, in these final days, the cost will be higher than ever before. The system will demand your silence, your submission, your soul, and many will give it willingly, believing they are choosing safety. But there is no safety outside of God. The world cannot protect you. The world cannot save you. It can only offer a fleeting illusion of peace before dragging you into destruction. And yet, even now, people remain blind. Even as the warnings grow louder, as the world spirals deeper into chaos, they refuse to see. They cling to distractions, to false hopes, to the belief that things will somehow fix themselves. But history has already shown us what happens when people ignore the signs. The flood came, the fire fell, the destruction swept in without mercy, and those who laughed at the warnings, those who mocked and scoffed, were the ones who perished first. The pattern has never changed. The warnings are given, the signs appear, and then judgment falls. The only question is, where will you stand when it does? You were not placed in this moment by accident. This is not just another chapter in history. This is the climax, the final act, the culmination of everything that has been foretold. And you are here now for a reason. You have been given the ability to see, to understand, to prepare. But knowledge alone is not enough. Awareness without action is useless. You must decide what you will do with what you know. Will you let fear paralyze you? Will you convince yourself that the warnings do not apply to you? Or will you take your stand before the choice is forced upon you? Because make no mistake, the choice will be forced upon you. And hesitation will be as dangerous as outright surrender. The deception will be so complete, so convincing, that even the strongest will feel the pressure to comply. It will not come with open threats, not at first. It will come as an invitation, a solution, a necessity. The world will not present the choice as one of good versus evil, but as one of progress versus resistance, of intelligence versus ignorance, of inclusion versus exclusion. And one by one, they will fall, not because they sought to betray the truth, but because they were not prepared to defend it. They were not anchored. They had no roots. And when the winds of deception blew, they were swept away with the rest. And when the moment comes, when the world stands at the precipice of no return, there will be no second chances, no more warnings, no more time to decide. What you have built within yourself now is what will carry you through the storm. If your foundation is weak, it will crumble. If your faith is shallow, it will shatter. The deception will not ask for your surrender, it will demand it. And those who are unprepared will give in without a fight, convinced they are making the logical choice. But logic is not truth. The mind can be deceived, manipulated, reshaped to fit the desires of those in power. Only the spirit, anchored in the unshakable truth of God, can withstand what is coming. But do not be afraid. Fear is the tool of the enemy. Fear keeps you silent, compliant, unwilling to act. But this is not a message of fear. It is a call to strength, to clarity, to preparation. The world will tell you that resistance is futile, that you are alone, that standing firm will cost you too much. But the faithful have never been alone. The same God who parted the seas, who shut the mouths of lions, who walked through the fire with his servants, will stand with those who refuse to bow. And in the end, those who stand will be the only ones who remain. Because everything else, all the power, all the systems, all the empires of men, will crumble into dust. But you must choose before the weight of the world forces your hand. If you wait until the pressure is unbearable, you will break. If you wait until the cost is too high, you will fold. The time to stand is now, before the final deception is fully unveiled, before the chains are locked in place, before the masses march willingly into their own enslavement. This is not about survival. This is about eternity, about where you will stand when the last battle is fought, when the final trumpet sounds, when the king returns to claim what is his. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot waver between truth and compromise. You must decide. And understand this: the world will not applaud your choice. It will not respect your convictions. It will not tolerate your defiance. It will brand you an enemy, a threat, a fool. It will strip away your comforts, isolate you, break you down until you question everything you once believed. And that is where many will fall, not because they lacked knowledge, but because they lacked resolve. They knew the truth but were not willing to suffer for it. They wanted salvation without sacrifice, redemption without rejection. But the path of truth has never been easy. It has always been costly, and in the days to come, that cost will only rise. So the question is not whether you see what is happening. The question is whether you have the strength to stand against it. Because the world will not slow down. The system will not wait for you to be ready. It is advancing, with or without your consent. And those who do not make a firm decision now will be swept away later. Do you think you will recognize the final deception when it comes? Do you think you will have the courage to resist when the price of resistance is everything? Courage is not built in a single moment. It is the result of 1,000 small choices. And those choices begin now. But for those who stand firm, for those who refuse to bow, there is a promise that goes beyond the suffering, beyond the trials, beyond the temporary darkness that is about to consume the earth. Because this is not just a story of destruction, it is a story of redemption. Those who endure, those who hold to the truth even when the world crumbles around them, will see the fulfillment of something far greater. The kingdoms of men will fall, the system will collapse under its own corruption, and in its place, something new will rise, something eternal, something unshakable, but only for those who refuse to sell their souls for the fleeting security of this world. The enemy wants you to believe that standing firm is pointless, that you are too weak, too insignificant to make a difference, that the tide is too strong, the deception too deep, the opposition too powerful. But that is the same lie that has been whispered since the beginning of time. The faithful have always been outnumbered. The righteous have always stood against overwhelming forces, and yet they endured, not by their own strength, but by the power of the one who called them. Do you think it will be any different now? The same God who delivered his people time and time again is the same God who will sustain those who refuse to bow. And when the final moment comes, when the world stands divided between those who conformed and those who resisted, you will see the truth with perfect clarity. Every decision will be laid bare. Every compromise, every act of faith, every moment of hesitation, it will all lead to one final outcome. The system that seemed so powerful will be exposed for what it truly is, a hollow, crumbling empire built on deception, and those who placed their trust in it will fall with it. But those who remained steadfast, those who endured the ridicule, the suffering, the loss, they will stand. And in that moment, all the pain, all the trials, all the sacrifices will have been worth it, because the war will be over, and victory will belong to the faithful. But before that day comes, you will be tested. The fire will separate the true from the false, the faithful from the fearful. Many will claim to stand for truth until it costs them something. Many will speak of faith until they must choose between their comfort and their convictions. And when the moment of testing arrives, when the world demands your allegiance, you will see what truly resides in your heart. Will you stand unwavering, even when the cost is unbearable? Or will you rationalize, compromise, convince yourself that survival is more important than obedience? Because that is how deception works. It does not appear as evil. It disguises itself as wisdom, as logic, as the only reasonable path forward. But there is only one path that leads to life, only one foundation that cannot be shaken. The world will offer you everything: acceptance, safety, prosperity, if you just conform. It will promise peace, but it will deliver chains. It will demand that you trade truth for security, that you surrender your soul for a moment of relief. And many will take the deal. They will bow, they will submit, and they will believe they have made the right choice. But the moment will come when they realize what they have done, and by then it will be too late. Because once you give yourself to the system, once you pledge your loyalty to the lie, there is no turning back. And yet, even in the darkest hour, a remnant will remain. A people who refuse to bend, who refuse to be deceived. They will stand, not by their own strength, but by the power of the one who called them. They will lose everything this world values: status, wealth, comfort, but they will gain something far greater. Because what is coming is not just the fall of a corrupt system, it is the final separation, the dividing of light and darkness, truth and deception, the faithful and the faithless. And when that moment arrives, when the final trumpet sounds, every knee will bow, not to the rulers of this world, not to the false promises of men, but to the King who was, and is to come. But by then, the choice will have already been made. The door will be shut, just as it was in the days of Noah. The warnings will have ceased, the opportunity to turn back will be gone, and those who ignored the call, those who clung to the comforts of a dying world, will watch as everything they trusted crumbles before their eyes. And there will be no escape, no second chances, no pleading for more time, because the time was now. The warnings were given, and they chose to look away. But you who are hearing this now, you still have a choice, a moment to act, a chance to prepare. Will you take it, or will you wait until the floodwaters rise until the fire falls, until the storm is already upon you. Do not mistake patience for inaction. Just because judgment has not yet fallen does not mean it will not come. The world mocks, thinking itself untouchable, invincible, beyond consequence. But there is a reckoning on the horizon. The final hour is approaching, and every moment that passes is a moment closer to the inevitable. Those who have placed their trust in governments, in wealth, in their own understanding, will soon see how fragile their foundations truly are. The ground beneath them will shake, the illusion of security will shatter, and, in their desperation, they will cry out. But the time to cry out is now, before the collapse, before the deception consumes them entirely. And you, what will you do? Will you ignore this as just another warning, just another voice lost in the noise? Or will you recognize the urgency of this moment? Because this is not a game. This is not a vague possibility, a distant theory. This is real. This is happening. And whether you acknowledge it or not, you are already in the midst of the greatest spiritual battle in human history. Every choice you make is leading you somewhere. Every moment of hesitation is shaping your destiny. And soon, very soon, there will be no more room for indecision. The lines will be drawn, and you will be on one side or the other. You cannot afford to wait any longer. The warnings are not for some distant future. They are for now. Every event unfolding before your eyes is leading to one final conclusion. The world is not spiraling out of control. It is following a precise, foretold path, and the destination is clear. But most will not see it until it is too late. They will continue living as if nothing is wrong, as if history is not repeating itself, as if prophecy is just an old story with no bearing on their lives. But reality does not care about belief. Truth is not dependent on acceptance. The storm is coming, whether you acknowledge it or not, but you still have time. Barely. A window remains open, but it is closing fast. The world is on the brink, and soon everything will change. And when it does, when the final pieces fall into place, there will be no stopping what comes next. You must decide now. Will you stand when the world demands that you bow? Will you hold fast when everything is taken from you? Or will you surrender, believing the lie that submission is survival? Because survival in this world means nothing if it costs you eternity. This is your moment, your final chance to wake up. Because after this, there will be no turning back. The choice has always been yours. No one can make it for you. No one can force you to see. But understand this, whatever you choose, you will have to live with it. The days of ignorance, of apathy, of assuming there will always be more time, are over. You are standing at the edge of something irreversible. And once you cross that threshold, once the final deception takes hold, there will be no way back. The world will not warn you when you've gone too far. It will not tell you when you have reached the point of no return. But by then, it will not matter. The door will be closed and the path you have chosen will be set. So I ask you, one last time, will you listen? Will you wake up while there is still time? Or will you be among those who look back in regret, realizing too late that the warnings were true? The final hour is upon us. The last trumpet is ready to sound. And when it does, every eye will see, every knee will bow, every soul will know the truth. But for many, that truth will come too late. Do not let that be your fate. The call has been given. The decision is yours. And the time is now. The warnings have echoed through generations, whispered in scripture, thundered through prophecy. But now they are no longer warnings. They are reality. Look around. The wars, the famine, the moral decay, the cries for global unity at any cost. These are not isolated events. They are the puzzle pieces forming the final picture, the one so many refused to believe was real. And yet, here it is, unfolding before your very eyes. But still, people remain blind, not because the truth is hidden, but because they refuse to see. It is easier to believe that things will go back to normal, that this is just another cycle of history, that everything will eventually settle. But it won't. The world you once knew is gone. The ground beneath your feet is shifting, and soon it will give way entirely. And those who are not prepared, those who have ignored every sign, will find themselves with nowhere to stand. And make no mistake, The deception will not stop here. It will grow, it will evolve, it will tighten its grip until every person is faced with a decision they cannot escape. You will not be able to hide. You will not be able to remain neutral. The system will demand your allegiance, and it will not accept hesitation. Today, it is convenience, digital currency, surveillance under the guise of security, laws that reshape morality. Tomorrow, it will be compulsion. And those who resist, they will be labeled as enemies, as threats, as obstacles to the greater good. This is how it has always worked. The truth has never been welcomed by a world built on lies. The righteous have always been persecuted, and yet, so many still believe they will somehow escape the choice, that they can drift through this storm without ever taking a stand. But they are wrong. The days of casual faith are over. The battle has begun, and every soul will have to choose a side. And when that moment comes, when the pressure reaches its peak, what will you do? Will you stand firm, knowing that everything around you will try to break you? Or will you give in, convincing yourself that survival is more important than truth? The deception will not feel like deception to those who are unprepared. It will feel reasonable, necessary. It will be disguised as progress, as unity, as the only way forward. And those who have not trained their minds to recognize the lie will embrace it without hesitation. Look at how easily people have already surrendered their freedoms, their convictions, their very identities for the sake of comfort. Look at how fear has been used to manipulate entire populations into submission. This is only the beginning. The final test will be far greater, and those who are not anchored in truth will not stand. They will fold under the weight of the world's demands, believing they have no other choice. But there is always a choice, even when the world says otherwise, even when the system tells you resistance is futile, even when standing for truth means losing everything. There is always a choice, and that choice will define not just your life, but your eternity. This is why you were warned. This is why prophecy exists, not to scare you, not to control you, but to prepare you, to shake you awake before it is too late. Because there will come a moment when it is too late, a moment when the decisions you made in the quiet places of your heart will determine whether you stand in the light or are consumed by the darkness. And that moment is closer than you think. The countdown is nearly over. The final separation is about to begin. And where you stand when it does, that will be the only thing that matters. The final warning has been given. There is no more room for doubt, no more space for delay. The time to prepare is not tomorrow, not when the pressure intensifies, not when the world system tightens its grip. The time is now. The choices you make in this moment, right now, are shaping your destiny. Every step you take is either bringing you closer to truth or deeper into deception. But soon, the choice will no longer be yours. Soon the world will force your hand. The moment will arrive when hesitation becomes submission, when silence becomes complicity, and those who thought they could wait, who thought they could stand on the sidelines, will find themselves caught in the tide. Because the battle is already here. The war for souls has begun, and you, whether you acknowledge it or not, are already part of it. So this is it, the final call, the last chance to open your eyes before the storm reaches its full force. You are not placed in this moment by accident. You are hearing this now for a reason. This is not about fear. This is about truth. This is about preparation. This is about standing firm when the world demands that you bow. Because soon, the king will return. Soon, the deception will be destroyed. Soon, the kingdoms of men will crumble beneath the weight of their own corruption. And when that day comes, when the final trumpet sounds, when the heavens split open and the truth is revealed for all to see, where will you be standing? Will you be among those who chose comfort over conviction? Or will you be among the faithful, those who endured, those who refused to bow, those who held fast to the truth when the world told them to let go? The choice has been given. The time is up. Decide now.